Nothing says you care like a home-cooked meal. And this month, we're serving up dinner for two on Aprons Optional. We're gonna start off by making a real easy salad that's gonna be delicious with our main dish. So in my measuring cup, I have 1/3 cup of balsamic vinegar. And to it, I'm gonna add 1/3 cup of olive oil. We're gonna make a real simple salad dressing with just a few ingredients. The nice thing is, this is an easy and very delicious salad dressing, and it doesn't take super long to make. Plus, you'll have extra left over, so you can put it on future salads as well. You just need to put it into your refrigerator, keep it nice and safe there. And then I'm gonna add a tablespoon of lemon juice from a fresh squeezed lemon. Stir that in. Each time I add an ingredient, I wanna stir it in and keep emulsifying it. Then I'm gonna give it some sweetness with a tablespoon of honey. Now we're gonna have 2 other flavors in there. One's pretty straightforward, we're gonna crack some fresh pepper in there, but we're also gonna add a little bit of a punch with a teaspoon of poppy seeds. So we'll sprinkle that in. Stir that together. And we're gonna take our pepper and 1, 2, 3, good enough for me. Stir that in, and now I've got a beautiful salad dressing that is ready to go. So let's talk about what's gonna actually go into this salad. So what I've got here is we've got 2 people, so I've got about 1.5 cups of lettuce for each of the people at my dinner party, so me and my +1. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some blueberries to that. So I'm gonna add about 3/4 cup of blueberries. The next thing I'm gonna do is I have 3.5 ounces of feta cheese. And what I have here is I have some lightly toasted almonds, and they're salted almonds as well. And I'm gonna add about a handful of that. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna toss it together. I've got an oversized container here. Whoops, I've got some escapees. All I need to do is gently cover it with my salad dressing. Like I said, I'm gonna have some extra, so I'm just gonna take that same fork and I'm just gonna lift and let it drop. Lift and let it drop. Lift and let it drop. And like I said, this is a super easy salad because you know what? We're already done. We've got our dressing, we have some fruit, we've got some extra crunch with those almonds in there. I put it in a larger container, so I just need to transfer it into a smaller container to put on my counter when I'm ready to eat dinner with my +1. So let's talk main dish. Main dish, star of the attraction, chicken cobbler. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, cobbler's normally a dessert. Well, it's kind of like if you take a chicken pot pie and you put a twist on it and you make it a little bit easier for yourself. So I have here 1/2 cup of flour, and we're gonna start making the cobbler, which is kind of like our shell to our chicken pot pie. So I just added my 1¼ teaspoons of baking powder to my 1/2 cup of flour. I'm also going to add 1½ teaspoons of sugar, and I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of cold butter, and I'm going to just take my hands and I'm gonna start mashing this all together. And so what I'm doing is breaking it apart so I've got kind of pea-sized clumps into my dough. One thing you want to keep in mind with this is you want your butter to be pretty gosh darn cold, because if your butter's at room temperature, this is just going to turn into a melty mess once you get your hands in there and it starts working with that butter. So what you want to do is make sure it's nice and cold. You can do this with your hands like I'm doing because that's the easy way, or if you want to, you could use a pastry cutter, but to me, this is easy. I have hands and I don't need to stress. So I've got my butter combined in there and I've got it in nice little pieces. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 2½ tablespoons of buttermilk. And now I'm just gonna put my hand in there again. And once again, with that buttermilk, I want it nice and cold, just right from the refrigerator. Then it won't jeopardize my butter getting too warm. So I've got everything all combined together. Now I'm gonna tuck this into my refrigerator. And while I'm doing that, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of olive oil to a pan, and I'm gonna get that heated up. And then once that teaspoon of olive oil is warm, then I'm gonna cook a half a cup of chicken breast. Now, this is a boneless, skinless chicken breast. And what I did is I already cubed it up. I cut off any of the fat that was on there or any remnants of skin just to clean it up. I want nice uniform pieces so that it looks great throughout my whole chicken cobbler. So I want to help my chicken out, and I'm going to spread it out around my pan now that my olive oil is nice and warm. And now I can just let it sit for a moment, then flip it, let it sit for a moment, and then flip it. So as you can tell, our chicken looks a lot different. We don't have that pink chicken anymore, and now we've got some browning starting to happen. We want this to take on some color because from this point on, there's gonna be liquid around it, and the color we have now is the only color we're gonna get. So to this chicken, I'm gonna add a half a cup of diced carrots, and now to this, I'm going to add some chicken broth. Now, with this, you want to plan on having about 2 cups, but you might not need all of that because what I'm going to do is I'm going to add enough chicken broth to this so that, and I'm going to use all of it, so that all of my pieces are covered with that chicken broth. So now what I need to do is bring this up to a boil, then bring it down to a simmer, and I'm going to let it simmer for 10 to 15 minutes or so. So we'll check in on this in about 10 minutes. So my carrots and my chicken are nice and cooked together. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a half a cup of frozen peas, stir and combine it. And those peas, because they're frozen peas, won't take nearly as long to cook. Now that I have my carrots and my peas and my chicken, I'm gonna do my best to strain that all. And now I have greatly reduced my chicken stock. And for the time being, I'm gonna take my corn and my carrots and my peas, and I'm just gonna put this into this container that eventually we're gonna be cooking the whole thing in, so why make a second dish dirty? And we can just set that to the side, because now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make our gravy for our chicken cobbler. So we are gonna start by taking 2 tablespoons of butter. We're gonna put it right into that pan that we just used. So I'm gonna melt my butter. So I've got my butter melted. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of flour, and I'm going to stir this together, and we're gonna start making a roux. So what I mean by that is I wanna keep whisking and whisking and whisking and whisking, and I wanna cook my butter basically with my flour so I get this nice golden color. And it doesn't take very long at all, you can see. But the darker I get that roux color, the richer this gravy is gonna taste. So even though it's combined and even though it started turning a little gold, I'm gonna go a little bit longer. So now I need to slowly add my next liquid. So I have 1/3 cup of milk, and I'm gonna slowly, little bit by little bit, add this. If I go all at once, it's gonna get super lumpy. So it's gonna seem silly that I'm going this slow, but it will make a big difference. And I wanna whisk, 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 and make sure that there's no lumps. Add the last of my milk. I'm gonna work to combine this. We can break up the little bit of lumps that might be there. Now, looking at my reserve stock, I've got a half a cup left, which is perfect, because now what I need to do is add my half a cup of chicken stock to my milk, flour, and butter mixture, and I'm gonna start making my gravy. So I'm gonna pour this in a little bit at a time, just like I did before. And you can see it's changing color, and we're turning more into our gravy now. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring it up to a gentle boil, and I'm gonna just keep standing here whisking for about 3 minutes until I get a real nice thick gravy. So let's keep stirring. So we are checking out this gravy, and you can see when I pull it out, I've got some nice ribbons that are starting to form. So I've got a delicious chicken gravy. So now our next step to this is to season it. So we have a half a teaspoon of salt, and we have a half a teaspoon of fresh black pepper. And we're gonna stir and combine that. And now we've got a delicious looking gravy. So we can bring back all of our vegetables that we cooked earlier, as well as our chicken. And we're gonna take that and we're gonna pop it in there. And actually, we're done with our whisk. So, oops, we got a rogue pea. That sounds kind of gross, a rogue pea. So we're gonna take that. You can put that in our colander off to the side. So now I'm gonna fold in my vegetables into my gravy mixture, just like so. So now what I need to do is I need to just transfer it back into our dish that we're gonna put in the oven. So because this is a delicious dinner for two, we only need this small 5x7 casserole dish. So now I'm just gonna take my scraper and level it out nice. And now we're gonna do that chicken cobbler part. So remember that dough we made at the very beginning? Now we're just simply going to take those little pieces of dough, grab little bits, and it's nice and cold, so we're just gonna squeeze it together. And we're just gonna top our chicken cobbler with the cobbler. One thing with this is it's kind of your call for what you want to put in here vegetable-wise. I went with carrots and peas. If you wanted to, you could put onions in there, you could put corn in there. If you wanted to be real simple about it, you could just buy a bag of frozen mixed vegetables and take the easy way out, but I wanted to go with fresh carrots for mine. But when you're thinking about this, you want it to be about 1/2 cup of chicken if you're going for 2 people, and you want it to be about 1 cup of vegetables. So we've got our cobbler on top of our chicken cobbler, and now we're gonna cook it at 400 degrees in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes. We wanna get this nice and bubbly and golden brown and delicious looking. The nice thing is, everything that goes into our oven for this meal, 400 degrees. So we'll check on this in 15. So for our delicious dessert for two, we're gonna go with a strawberry and a raspberry galette. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's really simple. It's just a pie where you don't need a pie pan to make it. So we are gonna start by taking the zest off our lemon, and all I need to do is just take that yellow color off, and I don't wanna get into the white because then it's not gonna taste yummy. So I'm just gonna work my way around, and I want my pieces nice and small, so you're just gonna take your zester and work your way around. When we're thinking about how much zest you need, you want it to be about a teaspoon of lemon zest. And I'm just gonna push that in there, and I've got about a teaspoon of lemon zest. Now what I wanna do is I wanna roll my lemon just to kind of break up some of that membrane inside of it. And then I'm gonna slice it just in half. And this is when your kitchen's gonna smell even yummier. And I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna squeeze out that lemon juice because I wanna get about a tablespoon of lemon juice into my bowl. And I put my hand over that because I don't want any of the seeds of that lemon to get inside of my berry mixture that I'm gonna put together. So I'm gonna save this for another tasty treat for another day. So I've got my lemon zest, my lemon juice, and I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of strawberries. And I have them diced really fine. And then I also have 1/2 cup of raspberries. So now to get this working, I'm gonna start stirring it together. And now on top of that, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna start to macerate the berries. Now, if that's a big fancy word that you normally don't use around your kitchen table, what that means is it's gonna start breaking down the fruit and it's gonna start turning it into this really sweet syrupy concoction. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of cornstarch, and that's gonna also help with that maceration part where it comes to pulling out all those good flavors. So I can set this to the side because now we're gonna work on our pie crust. And our pie crust is pretty simple, just like any pie crust. So if you've never made pie before, don't worry about it. We have 1/2 cup of flour, and to that 1/2 cup of flour, what I'm gonna do is I have a teaspoon of sugar, and then I have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just gonna take my fingers and stir this together to start mixing those. And now the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take cold butter and I'm gonna mix it into this mixture. You can use a pastry cutter if you want to. You can put it into a food processor and pulse it. but what I like to do is just combine it together with my fingers. So what I have here is butter that I've cut into 1/2-inch cubes, and I have 4 tablespoons of butter all together. And now I'm just gonna take and I'm gonna start smushing this and breaking it apart. And I wanna keep working it together with my hands until all of the butter is combined into that flour mixture, and none of the pieces are bigger than about the size of a pea like we put in our chicken pot pie. So now that I have all of my butter incorporated into my mixture, what I'm gonna do is I have 2 tablespoons of buttermilk, and I'm gonna add that in there. And I'm gonna do the same thing where I'm gonna start combining it with my hands and just folding it together to make a dough. And it'll be kind of a shaggy, wet dough, but once you get it totally combined, it'll start to hold its shape, and then we'll be able to roll it out in just a moment. So you can see we just hopped ahead a little bit. It looks a little different around here. I have my pie crust in my bowl, and it's started to kind of come together. Like we said, it's a shaggy dough. And so we've still got a little bit here or there that can be pressed in. So we're gonna bring it out of the bowl. And now we're gonna knead it together a little bit with our hands, but we don't wanna overwork it. And we wanna get it into a ball. And notice I've got a floured work surface. Now I'm just simply gonna start rolling this out into as close to a circle as I can get. And I want it to be about 1/8 of an inch thick. So we're gonna go back and forth, and we're gonna keep going in different directions to try and keep that nice little circle for ourselves. If something sticks to your rolling pin, just push it back in. And I'm cheating because I've got 1/8 of an inch markers on my rolling pin. But if you are real picky, you could come at it and you can measure it. We're gonna take and we're gonna transfer this over to some parchment paper. It's not a perfect circle, and that's okay. Just gonna put it on that parchment paper. Okay, so we cheated and cleaned up our area again, and now you can see I've got my pie dough on here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to scoop out some of my strawberry and raspberry mixture, and I'm basically just gonna start heaping it up into the middle. And now what I wanna do is kind of shape this a little bit, make it kind of round. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start folding up the edges to just kind of make a border to hold together all of that goodness inside of our galette. And you can see we basically got our no pie pan pie. So the last thing we want to do is just come around, and I've got 2 tablespoons of milk and an egg mixed together to make an egg wash. Just gonna give that another quick little doop doop doop. And now I'm gonna give it an egg wash. Now with this, you wanna take some time and really get it covered, because you want all those little crevices in that crimped up edge to be covered with that egg wash. So now it's super simple. 400-degree oven behind me. Put it in there for 25 to 35 minutes. It's gonna be a little dependent on what the weather's like outside. And when that pie crust is beautifully golden brown, we know it's ready to take out and enjoy. So let's see what this delicious spread looks like. We've got a delicious dinner for 2, and the best part is this whole meal can be ready in less than an hour, and you get 3 homemade favorites, in my house anyway, from the blueberry and feta salad to the chicken cobbler, and ending with that delicious strawberry and raspberry galette. If you're looking for an insider tip, I'd serve that up with some ice cream, because remember, the apron's optional, but the flavor isn't.
Silver thumbs up.